What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So back here working on my BMW again. It's pretty typical higher mileage BMW is going to need things here and there. I like to mess around with mine, so it's being repaired a lot more often than normal cars, normal BMWs. Today it's just going to be simple maintenance stuff. Actually, wasn't necessary to do this, but I bought front brakes about 6 months ago, probably 6 to 8 months ago. I used off-brand from BMW, what I thought was going to be a premium brand, and in the last 6 to 8 weeks, I've developed a grind from the driver's front wheel. Pulling the wheel off and pulling everything apart, there's nothing wrong with anything. The pads, the rotors, everything look okay. So I think it's just an issue with the pad material. It's just causing the noise. It's not so much as a grind as it sounds like there's something stuck in the pad. So we're actually going to be going to OE equipment. It's not straight from the dealership. It's actually from the manufacturer that makes the parts for BMW. I'll show you what we got here. It's going to be Techstar is actually the brand that makes the parts for BMW. So this is OE equipment as far as parts go, just not from BMW. Get you a little shot there of the part numbers that you're going to need. Top one being your brake pad set. Second one is going to be your brake pad rear sensor, and the bottom is going to be the brake disc that you need 2 of. So got everything here. On another note, tools that you're going to need are pretty simple as well. Longer 3/8 ratchet to be able to break the caliper bolts loose. I have this to break the caliper bolts loose if I need the clearance. I'm probably not going to need the clearance, but I just have it just in case. Caliper bolts are going to be a 16, or the caliper bracket bolts are going to be a 16. The caliper bolts that hold the caliper to the bracket are going to be a 7mm Allen. I have the regular 7mm Allen as well as a ball, just in case there's any kind of clearance issues. There shouldn't be on the front, but sometimes when you're working on the rears of these cars, which are also 7mm, there's clearance issues, so I have both of those. The screw that holds the rotor to the wheel hub is going to be a 6mm. I have that here, and 1/4 inch drive, and then another 3/8 drive ratchet for your caliper bolts, and I have a 3/8 electric ratchet just to speed things up a little bit. So we're going to get these brakes put on. Let's get to it. All right, so once you guys get your wheels off, first thing you want to take off is going to be this spring clip. This spring clip is relatively easy to get off. In between here, screwdriver, pry out. You're going to pry it out, and there's 2 little hooks on the ends of this part of it that hook into this caliper here. So when you pry back, you're going to see those hooks reveal, and then you're just going to want to pull out on it, and it'll pull right out. After you get that off, back here on your caliper, there's 2 caps. They look like this. There's one there, and there is one here. I'm going to pull those caps off, and then once you pull those caps off, that's access to the two 7mm Allens that hold your brake caliper on. So I'm going to get the brake caliper popped off, and then I'll show you what to do after that. So once you got your caliper off, I wanted to, before you actually get your caliper off, one other thing you're going to have to pull out is going to be the pad sensor. Mine was actually stuck in there, and I actually just ended up ripping the wire, which is fine because I have a new one, as you can see, free at the end of the wire. It's not a big deal. If you were trying to reuse yours, I probably could have reused mine because didn't have that much, it wasn't worn into enough, but I have a new one, so I'm going to put a new one on. But if you, for some reason, don't have a new one, just be careful when you're taking it out. It should come out of there just with a little bit of prying in the slot that it sits in. If there's a concern that you can't get it out of there in the car, you can always unplug it and pull the wiring through this hole in the caliper and then worry about getting it off outside of the car. So once you get your caliper off, back here there's a 16 here and a 16 here to get your bracket off. So we're gonna get the bracket off, and then the next thing you're gonna do after getting the bracket off is this 6mm Allen right here takes the rotor off. So I'm gonna take the caliper off, or caliper bracket off, and take the rotor off, and we'll go back together after that. All right, guys, so as you can see, everything's back together. Relatively easy. Like I said, 7's holding the caliper on, 16's holding the bracket on, 6mm Allen here holding the rotor on. Put the rotor back on, put the caliper back on, cleaned up the caliper bracket. You're going to need either some brake clean or a wire brush to do that. I used a wire brush. Before you go back together, you're going to need something to press the piston back in. You can use a C-clamp, or you can use a large pair of pliers like this. Something you can do to make your life easier is in the beginning, before you get everything torn apart with the old parts, you can stick a screwdriver in here and work the piston back in. Probably almost 3/4 or more of the way back in, so you don't have to do as much work with the C-clamp or the pliers. But if you're using pliers or a C-clamp, you can use the old pad as a surface to press on. But if you're using the pliers, squeezing against the face of the piston, or using the C-clamp against the face of the piston, be careful not to mess up the boot that's on the piston, because if you mess up the boot, you're going to have other issues. We're completely done with this side. This clip here, you're going to want to seat this pad here, this foot here, and this foot here, and push the spring clip that way. And when you push it that way, you then push in towards the caliper, and it'll seat these two little hooks on this spring clip here. Last thing we have to replace is going to be the pad wear sensor. As I told you in the beginning, I broke this one trying to pull it out of the pad. It happens most of the time, so it's not that big of a deal. It's anchored here, and then it loops around, and it's anchored here to the body, and then it's actually inside of this box here. And this box is pretty easy to get into. On the other side of it, there's two little tabs that you pry just out with your hands and open up the box. And then this is going to be your pad wear sensor right here, the one towards the back, the black one. So we're going to get our pad wear sensor swapped out and get the other side done, and we'll be done with this job. All right, guys, so as you can see, it's not too difficult to do brakes on this. Just wanted to give you two notes. One is, when you go to push your pistons back in, if your brake fluid reservoir is full, it's going to push the fluid past the cap, and it's going to leak out on the floor. If you have the ability to, suck that fluid out beforehand so that it doesn't happen. If you don't have the ability to, it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt anything. If the brake fluid gets pushed past the cap, just make sure you clean it off as best you can off of things, because brake fluid does have the ability to eat through paint. The areas that it's leaking through are actually somewhat undercoated, with paint, so they don't typically have a problem where the paint comes off because of the brake fluid, but just get it off the best you can. Another thing, the brake rotors, if you're using Techstar or BMW Pro brake rotors, are coated. When you hit the brake the first 10 to 15 times, they're going to sound bad or you know, just crunchy and grindy, that's normal. That's the coating wearing off of the brake rotor wear surface. Don't be concerned about that. Like I said, it'll go away. When you're done with this job and you go to drive your car, make sure that you do a brake bed-in procedure. I will post a link to a brake bed-in procedure down below in the description. Everybody does it differently. There's a bunch of different, you know, ways of doing it. I have my way of doing it. Somebody else has their way of doing it. BMW has a predetermined way of doing it. I don't do it that way. I do it the way that I was taught from the beginning. So I've been doing that on BMWs for the last 11 years that I've been working on them and haven't had any problems. So like I said, I will post a link to that down in the description. Other than that, we're done for today. If you guys have any questions about this job, please comment down below. If this helped you out, please like this video, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys later.